Okay, so we'll just, oh good, we got Jason on board now, so that's excellent. We had two for sure that sent their regrets. They have, I don't know, some curling stuff on or something. So as people come on board, Bill is going to allow them in. So usual procedure tonight, after we get going, we will mute everybody, and halfway through, and then again at the end, we'll unmute and see if there are any questions. In the meantime, there's the chat box, which you can put any questions that you have in. I'll keep an eye on that, and as questions come in, I'll be able to pass them along to Bill. So I'd like to introduce Bill Tschirhart. Bill is a charter professional coach in curling. He has been a coach in the sport for quite a few years, brings a wealth of knowledge and an incredible talent in delivering that knowledge. So Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, and when you think it's appropriate for me to mute everybody else, I will do that.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Geez, with that introduction, I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say. Well, first of all, it's a delight to be with you tonight, you plural, obviously, and I've done a number of these with Curl BC, and when Andrea and I talked about that, Andrea thought that perhaps there might be a couple in which I was interested in presenting from the Northern Ontario Curling Association. And as you can see, this is the first one, and 2 weeks from today, we're going to do another one. And I'm quite happy to be participating with that. First of all, Andrea said I got to keep this under 3 hours, and I think I can do that, Andrea.
Yay!
So, hey, there we go. I'm not the brightest candle on the menorah, and I come to the realization that perhaps takes a little longer for me than others. But this particular, and I'll use the word presentation, even though I don't really like that word, this particular topic really is 30 years in the making. And I say that because of an incident that I had at a conference, a coaching conference, about 3 years ago. And there were a number of coaches, and as you might guess, from all sorts of sports, hockey and basketball and soccer, etc. And we were doing the proverbial icebreaker and getting to meet one another, and I introduced myself to a gentleman. And of course, we were to, tell our new friend the sport that we coached. And I said I was a curling coach. And it was the response that I got from him that really was the genesis of what we're going to do tonight. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Oh, curling. Oh, you coach the technical sport." Yeah, I kind of had the same reaction that I think some of you are having right now. I wasn't sure whether that was a compliment or a put down. I don't think it was a put down, but it bothered me. It bothered me for quite some time. And really, I guess that's the way we're seen by the other sport communities and perhaps spectators, that we're the technical sport. And so it really got me to thinking, and that's kind of dangerous anytime that happens. And so I guess I had to finally admit that, yeah, he was right. Yeah, we are the technical sport, and we shouldn't be just a technical sport. Now, this whole thing about what are you thinking? 4 words, and it could be, what are you thinking? Or it could be, what are you thinking? Or it could be, what are you thinking? Or it could be, what are you thinking? You could put the emphasis on any one of the 4 words and come up with just a little bit of a different twist here. I had somebody throw it back to me, and that's what they, also known as the technical double cross. And I think that you'll understand what I mean by the technical double cross as we go along. So my title slide, Yogi was right. And when I do this with juniors, I have to explain who Yogi was because the juniors assume it was Yogi Bear. And what did Yogi Bear have to do with this? Well, of course, I'm referring to Yogi Berra, the late catcher for the New York Yankees, who said a lot of very interesting things like, Yogi, what time is it? Oh, you mean right now? He actually said that. And he also said, gee, it's getting late early. Now, there was an interesting explanation for that because he was referring to the shadows in Yankee Stadium, which in October, when the Yankees would play the World Series, the shadows that would normally be late in the game were now appearing early in the game. So he had an interesting way of sort of saying the truth. But he was asked one time about baseball, and he says, well, it's 50% physical, but it's 90% mental. And of course, Yogi was exactly right. Now, before I go on, it's always flattering to me if people are making notes, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So here's the deal. When we're finished tonight, I am quite willing to share this particular PowerPoint presentation with you. I will give it to you, but I'm not sure how many we have signed on tonight. Say if there are 10 of you, I don't want to do it 10 times. So I will give you my email address. I don't know if it appears in one of the slides. It might, but I'll make sure I give it to you before we finish. And as long as you, when I'm finished, as long as you send me a quick email message right away, perhaps with a bit of an evaluation, I always appreciate that. Try to be kind if you don't mind, but give me an honest evaluation and just say, yes, I'd like a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. My only request is that you don't give it away, that you keep it for your personal use. If anyone asks for it, please do not give it away. And that's important so that it doesn't get watered down. I don't mind giving it to you because you're hearing me present it. So with that, we will continue. Now, I asked Andrea if we keep the microphones open just for a brief moment here right at the beginning, because I've got a question for you. And I don't want a knee-jerk reaction. I want you to think about this. And my question, or I guess it's a question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust your curling delivery? Your curling delivery, the one that you have, your delivery of the curling rock, on a scale of 1 to 10, right now, how much do you trust your curling delivery? So I just want you to think of a number. Now, it's much easier when I do this with real live people in front of me instead of the screen of my computer. But I don't know exactly how we're going to do this, Andrea, but how many 10s do we have out there? How many of you would rate it as a 10? Anybody?
The mic is open, so people can comment or they can put it in the chat box.
Yeah, how many 10s have we got?
Okay. Sandy, I would say 10 for me.
Okay, we got one 10. Okay, how many 9s do we have?
Yeah, I'd say either 8 or 9 for me.
Okay, so all right, how many 8s then do we have? Is that Mike? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, how many 7s do we have?
Sean Crochet is 8 to 9. Jason Johnson is a U.
Sorry.
Oh, 7.
Okay. Perfect.
Should have known that right underneath.
Natalie, I'd be a 6.
Okay, a 6. Okay, any 5s? Any 5s out there? Benoit says he's a 3. Minus 3. Oh, he's an 8. Okay, all right, 8. All right, I want you to keep that number in mind until just a little bit later. So that's all we need, Andrea. So if you want to mute it, right, we're okay.
All right, Okay, so Bill, it's you and I.
All right. Okay, why is the screen not changing here? Oh, down here at the bottom. Okay. This is very important, this particular slide. I kind of want this to sink in. Success of a curling shot depends as much, if not more, upon what you do before you step into the hack than what you do after you step into the hack. When a person, and I'm always very flattered when someone asks me, I'd like you to go out on the ice and have a look at my curling delivery. I'm always very flattered, and that's the person's signature skill. And when they sort of put that into my hands or your hands, it's a tremendous responsibility. And when we go out there, and I won't go into the whole process, but when they're about to deliver their first shot, I stop them and I ask them, "What are you thinking?" And in almost every case, they look at me like, "Well, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What am I thinking?" Well, because they wouldn't ask me to have a look at their delivery if there wasn't some sort of a self-assessment that something was wrong. And in many times, many occasions, and usually it's a very accomplished athlete that will ask me to do this, and I look at it, and they actually deliver a curling rock, I'm not surprised when I'm seeing pretty much a world-class delivery. But they wouldn't be asking for some assistance if something wasn't going wrong. And in most cases, as I said, I'm not the brightest candle on the menorah. In a lot of cases, it's because their thought process before they step into the hack is either absent or in a state of total confusion. Okay. Well, I think those of you who know me, and Andrea has seen this many times, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. I think it was that Kyle guy that's over in South Korea that said that the first time that I heard it. And if you want something you've never had before, you'd better be prepared to do something or some things that you've never done before. Now, this is kind of interesting. Again, you don't have to open the mics for this, but what's the first thing that you would do if the washing machine stopped working? Well, some of you might feel handy enough to get the screwdriver out and take the back off and know where to look to see if there was a mechanical problem. But I wonder what you would do in that situation. What would you do if the vehicle wouldn't start? Well, again, call the auto club or lift the hood if you think there might be something there that you could spot. What would you do if the dog was sick? Well, in most cases, it would be a call to the vet, I would guess. What would you do if your computer screen went blank? Well, you'd call some 10-year-old. I think that would probably be a good thing to do. But what would you do if you played poorly in a series of curling games? What would you do? And again, when I do this in the form of a sort of a live audience, in most cases, it would be some sort of a response on the cold side of the glass. Okay, if I'm playing poorly in a series of games, it must be something technical. I must be doing something wrong technically, whether it's with my balance, my slide, my release, or because now we go back to that coach that said, oh, curling. Oh, that's the technical sport. And we are way too technocentric, way too technocentric. Now, a bit of a confession here. This particular presentation was first done to a group of lawn bowlers, my summer sport. So that's why if all you take onto the green, well, that would be ice or court or course, Because I've done this with tennis players, I've done it with golfers, and of course I've done it with curlers. If all you take onto the ice is a sound delivery, you don't have very much. Even though, if you look at all of the support material that we've put together over the years, it's almost all dedicated to something technical. And that's not to be a slam on any of the provincial sport governing bodies or the national sport governing bodies. Again, it goes back to that whole idea that, well, if everything is solid technically, everything must be okay. If I've got this, really good serviceable delivery, everything must be okay. Well, everything may not be okay. This is an interesting question. I love to ask this question of curlers. Is your delivery technically sound enough to allow you to make the types of shots that you're called upon to make in your competitive environment? Now, one of the things that you have to understand is I spend as much time with high-performance athletes as I do with recreational athletes. In fact, I've got a pilot project here on the southern part of Vancouver Island with a number of curling clubs where I'm sort of their itinerant instructor / coach. And most of my time is spent with what we would call recreational curlers. And I love to ask them this question. And, when I say, well, what kind of shots are you called upon to make on your Tuesday night rec league or whatever? Well, draws and takeouts and the odd come around. And, well, is your delivery technically sound enough to make those shots? And the resounding response that I get is, yes, it is. But you see, here's the problem. But do you make those shots consistently enough? And I don't think I'm going out on much of a limb when I say that that's the most frustrating aspect of this sport or golf or, insert sport here. You know that your delivery is technically sound enough to make all those shots, but why don't I make them more consistently? And again, that was kind of one of the driving forces behind this entire topic. And here's the good news. You already have the skills to be more consistent. And there really is no learning curve. But what you might not have is an understanding of how to use those skills to help you perform better. And so I say to you folks that you're not really going to learn anything new tonight, because you all not only have the skills as a curler, you also have the skills as a coach and instructor. But what I hope that I might be able to do is give you a different way to look at all those skills that you already have. And again, we can do this rhetorically, and I love to ask this with a group of curlers, when you step into the hack, do you hope to make the shot you're called upon to make? Well, in most cases, there's a forest of hands go up. I don't hope to make the shot. And you know what's coming here, don't you? I expect to make the shot. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about attitude. The basic attitude that a curler has before he or she is about to make a curling shot. Now I want to go back to that 1 to 10 thing. You see, when I asked the question on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust your curling delivery? I did not ask you to evaluate it. And my guess is you're not much different from most everybody else to whom I posed that question. Most of you gave an evaluation of some sort. We did hear 110, but everybody else was a 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, whatever it happens to be. But I didn't ask you to do that. I asked you how much you trusted it. And one of the points that I try to make with everybody who comes within the sound of my voice is this: you can never leave your skills at home. It's impossible. You couldn't do that if you tried. But what you can leave at home is the attitude that you have towards that skill. So you might be a third or fourth year curler knowing that, well, you're not as skillful in delivering a curling rock as you like to be. But darn it, when you go out to that Thursday afternoon league or go to that one-day bonspiel in Kenora or wherever it happens to be, trust, you see, is binary. There's no 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You either trust it or you don't. And it just doesn't make any sense to me at all that regardless of the level of your skill, that you wouldn't trust it. Because, as I said, if it isn't a 10, it's going to be a 1. So I would hope that if I was to ask that question again, how much do you trust your delivery? I hope everybody would say 10. I do an awful lot of reading with sports psychologists. Well, some of you perhaps are in the same boat that I am. I can't get enough of reading what sports psychologists have to say. And certainly the name Dr. Saul Miller, if you do that sort of thing, you're going to know Dr. Miller. And I've got a number of books here with so many of those little tab things to identify certain thoughts. And his book, Performing Under Pressure, how we think profoundly affects how we perform. And he didn't need the adverb profoundly, but it's there. How we think profoundly affects how we perform. So when I say to that athlete before he or she delivers the first shot down the ice to get a response from me, when I say, what are you thinking? That's how critical it is. So if you want to read a great book, if you've not read Dr. Miller's book, Performing Under Pressure, it is fantastic. Performing Under Pressure, Dr. Saul Miller. So how would you finish this sentence tag? When I play or perform at my best, how would you finish that? Andrea, you want to open the mics and get some responses on this?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's do that.
Unmute everyone.
Just identify yourself, and then if you want to weigh in, go right ahead. When you play at your best, what would you say to that?
Andy, start us off.
Okay, I would say I have, at my best, I have total focus.
Yep.
For me, when I play at my best, I would say that I'm just I'm having fun. I'm not thinking too much. It's this zone.
So the zone comes in there.
Yeah, I'm not going to pass judgment on any of this. I just want to hear it. Benoit says he plays at his best when he knows there's a beer waiting for him at the end of the game. Yeah. And I help that boy.
After the fact, I often wonder, why can't I do that every time?
Yeah, there's the consistency part. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, okay. All right, thanks, Andrea. We can shut that down then. So often when I work with a team, after a team has a great performance, I spent a good deal of time with the Greg Persinger rink from Seattle. I get into Seattle a fair bit, and they are the new USCA champions. And so we did a little bit of a debrief from their win in Fargo, North Dakota. And the first thing I asked them is, why did you perform? Not why did you win? The performance was good enough to win. But why did you perform that way? we don't have a very rich tradition in our sport of identifying why we're successful. When we lose, oh, we'll talk about why we lost for days on end if we're allowed. But win or perform, what a wonderful opportunity is lost to not know why you're playing well. I say to so many recreational curlers that the real intrigue in this sport is to always say to yourself after a shot has been delivered, what did I learn? And put that information into the database. I know you're playing a team sport, but you want to leave that recreational game saying, I really made a tremendous contribution, very positive contribution to my team. And one of the best ways to do that is to build up a database as to why that shot was successful and why another shot wasn't. So I just want to make that point. Always know why you performed well. I'm not going to spend a long time on this point, but I'm a huge believer in keeping a journal, because success sometimes, success sometimes has absolutely nothing to do with curling. It has everything to do with what's happening in your real life. And if you keep a journal, you're going to start to, I could have said, connect the dots, or in this case, follow the breadcrumbs. You might find that when certain things happen at work, or certain things happen at home, or certain things happen in terms of exercise and nutrition or whatever. And if you didn't play very well in that series of games, remember that one of the first slides tonight, it might have absolutely nothing to do with curling. It might have everything to do with what's happening in your real life. You'll never connect those dots. You'll never be able to follow the breadcrumbs unless you keep a journal. And keeping a journal for some people can be a real pain in the backside when they first start. But I haven't had an athlete yet who, after a week or two, can't wait to write in the journal. And of course, the journal can be in two parts. It can be about what's happening in your real life, but it can also be about what's happening in certain games and the way you communicate with your teammates. And of course, that's an entire presentation all of its own, your communication protocol. So I always encourage athletes who care about their performance. And I say to curlers, and just how good do you want to be? Doesn't matter what your competitive environment is, just how good do you want to be? And journaling is kind of fun on top of it. Now, this is just me talking here. You're not going to find this anywhere in any of the literature unless you've purchased a copy of A Pane in the Glass, A Coach's Companion. But I put curlers into 4 categories. Okay, you've heard me talk about recreational curlers, so that's certainly a category. But you're going to get recreational curlers who will start to seek advice from certified coaches and instructors because they're getting a little bit more serious about the consistency of their performance. It may not bring them into any kind of an environment where they want to go into play downs or whatever, but you know, if they're going to sign up for that one-day Bonspiel in Kenora, let's play as well as we can. So that's another group, a serious group. And then you're going to get serious curlers who seek one another, and they do decide to go into play down. Let's find out just how good we really are compared to other teams in our region and zone. And then, of course, we've got that group that we're watching on television. We've got elite curlers. So I'll talk about these 4 groups. And as I said, they're just my terms. There's nothing official here. I think some of you possibly have seen this particular slide before. And it isn't a mistake on the left side of the slide, the gap between competitive and elite, because I don't want to get into a philosophical discussion here, but going from competitive to elite, especially in our country, that gap is not small, and it's not getting any smaller. In fact, it could be getting a little bit bigger. But let me explain these 3 triangles. The inverted yellow triangles are career goals. Well, if we see the bottom, Okay, welcome, John. If we see the bottom of that triangle for a recreational curler, they don't have any career goals, really. I mean, they love curling. They watch it on television. They're interested in participation, and they've got no outcome goals to speak of. But a serious recreational curler, well, you know, it would be nice to make the playoffs in our Tuesday night league or our Thursday afternoon league, or maybe get into the prizes for that one-day Bonspiel in Kenora. Well, competitive curlers, of course, no, their career goals are a little bit better defined, because did we make playdowns, the zone or the regions, or perhaps getting to provincials or whatever? Well, the group of curlers that are in the elite category, well, we've seen definite evidence of their career goals, because they're talking about world championships and Olympics. Some of you might know that I coached the Van Osh team from up the road in Nanaimo this past year. And our career goals, interestingly enough, we were the last to qualify for BC provincials. We didn't even think we would be there. And actually, going to provincials in Victoria, we thought if we had a winning record that would be terrific. We end up making the playoffs and winning the province, and then off to the Scotties. And our career goals then changed. As one goal was achieved, then we had to readjust the goals. Now the pink triangle, well, technical skills. Well, the recreational athlete, it's all about technical. I mean, they're learning all the skills. They're going to spend a lot of time and energy on those technical skills, as are the serious curlers, the competitive curlers. But it's interesting, at the elite level, they're probably not going to be learning too many new skills. Everything is pretty much at the maintenance level. But it's the green triangle that's the most interesting, because the recreational curler isn't even aware that there might be anything on the mental side of this game, where a serious and competitive curler starts to really realize that there's something about this sport that is very important on what I call the warm side of the glass. But at the elite level, there's a reason why the Adam Kingsburys and the John Hams are sitting on the coaching bench at the Olympics. It's the sports psychologists that are there front and center. With the elite curlers, they understand that the differences between bronze, silver, and gold many times has absolutely nothing to do with those skills. And of course, in Canada right now, it's a bit of a sore point, so we'll just kind of go on and won't dwell on that. Now again, as I said, it started out with a group of lawn bowlers. So are you a good curler because of your delivery, or in spite of your delivery? And again, a rhetorical question I love to ask. I have a blog site that went along with my coaching manual, and you would direct your attention to an article that I wrote, but at what expense? And there's the March 25th back in 2015. Some curlers might say it is because of my delivery that I'm a good curler in this case, but maybe it's in spite of it. Well, I'm not going to say too much more about that. There's a little bit of homework for you to read that blog. And again, you don't have to write this down, because if you send me an email when this is over, I will send you all this information. Okay, Andrew, you ready?
I am.
Let's talk about performance. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of taking Canada's national senior teams to the World Championships each year. In about, 4 weeks, I guess, we're going to be off to Östersund, Sweden. Next week, I'm going to make my way into Stratford. The two teams that I'm going to be taking to this year's World Seniors just happen to be in this year's Nationals, because I always take them 1 year hence. And so I'm going into Stratford to watch them play and do whatever I can to get to know them as much as I can. And I get this question asked of me all the time. when it's about performance, what's the difference here? Like, what are we talking about performance? And I love this particular definition. And I think the first time I heard this was uttered by Jim Waite. But this is the question that I get asked as a national coach. Don't the athletes with whom you work already know what to do? Well, my answer is very simple. Yep, they sure do. They already know what to do. Well, you know what the next question is going to be. What on earth do they need you for? Well, they do need me because I make sure they do what they know, which is another aspect of consistency. It's really, really frustrating to know what to do and then after a game realize you didn't do what you knew. And a lot of times that's a question of awareness. If you're not aware of what you need to do, how on earth are you ever going to do it? Remember, there's nothing to learn here. You already have those skills. The performance equation. This kind of started again with Jim Waite, and over a number of trillion camps, we've modified it. And again, you know, what's this performance all about? Well, it certainly starts with your skill level. You know, the technocentric component of our sport is important. I mean, it is skill-based. But performance is better if we have the mental preparation skills, and kind of that's what this presentation is all about. And then, of course, we come to experience, and I love this definition for experience. It doesn't eliminate errors, but it does reduce, and in some cases, completely eliminates the negative effects that those errors have on performance. So you put a skilled athlete together with the mental preparation skills and experience, and you're well on your way to performing consistently. But then, when you knew this was coming, because minus D, and D is the killer of performance. We're talking about distractions, and most of the distractions that negatively impact the performance of a team come from within the team itself. I had the pleasure of talking on the telephone this morning. He kind of forgot that I was on the West Coast. That's okay. I don't mind getting up early. But I spoke with Eugene Ritzik. And some of you, that will be a name that I think a number of you will know because he's coming to Supernatural British Columbia with his master's team. And we talked about a number of things. And I mentioned to him that the biggest killer of performance is distractions. And when I take the national senior teams to the World Championships, that's my main job, is to deflect or shield the team from distractions as much as I can. But when I talked to Eugene this morning with his team in particular, and I love to ask this question, what is your communication protocol? Because every team absolutely positively has to have a communication protocol. One of the longest titles of articles in my coaching manual is who to say, how to say, where to say, when to say, why to say, how to say, if I left that out. In other words, who says what to whom, where, why, how, and when. Because you mess up on any one of those, and you've created a distraction. An unintended distraction, of course, but when teams fail to do that, when they fail to have a communication protocol, it's one of the slipperiest slopes that they can ever be on. So minus distractions. Well, we can meet again for an entire presentation or webinar on team dynamics, and team dynamics can either add to the performance or it can subtract from the performance. That's why it's plus or minus TD. Plus or minus nutrition and physical preparation. And, you know, you ignore these at your own peril. And if our game has changed in the last number of years in any way, I mean, we're dealing with athletes for sure now, and there's no ignoring nutrition and physical preparation. Then there's always this, luck. And luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So there's the performance equation. It's not written in stone anywhere. It's been a compilation of a lot of instructors, mostly at the Trillium camp, that have added to this. It started out very simply, and now that's what it looks like. Some of you are familiar with that. Everyone wants to perform well. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the recreational category, the serious, competitive, or elite. Everybody wants to perform well. And some even know what it takes to perform well. And of course, that's why we're there as instructors and coaches. But when you look at the person in the mirror, are you willing to do what it takes to perform well? And quite honestly, when I talk to recreational curlers, there's various levels of wanting to do better, because some don't really care that much. They like to be there with their friends, and bless their hearts, they are the heart and soul of this sport. But again, remember, I did this with lawn bowlers. Now, the interesting thing about lawn bowling is a lawn bowling club is not like a curling club. The scoreboards are not there permanently. When lawn bowlers go out to play, they go to the equipment shed and they take the scoreboard, and usually the green is fenced, and they hang the scoreboard up on the fence. And I love to say this to lawn bowlers. And even though in curling, because our scoreboards are permanently displayed, doesn't mean you have to use them. And so I say to a group of recreational curlers who say, well, we just play for fun, Bill. We don't really care about wins and losses and da-da-da. Then I say, well, then why do you keep score? Or to the lawn bowlers, why do you bother to take the scoreboards out there? So don't give me this malarkey that you don't care about how well you play. So what does it take? What's the difference here? Well, it's the D word. That's all it takes. It takes a little bit of discipline. It's sweating the small stuff. And again, discipline is a choice. You can choose to be a disciplined athlete, or you can choose not to be disciplined. But you can't have it both ways. If you care about your performance and you care about the consistency of performance, it's all about discipline. Remember, I started out by saying that you already have the skills. Now it's a matter of whether you want to take the time to use the skills to make you a more consistent athlete. So what are those skills? We've talked about attitude so far, but there are some others. Because you see, everybody is subject to what, and again, this is Bill's term, I just refer to it as competitive breakdown, because we're not machines, we're not robots. So how do we avoid competitive breakdown? Well, it's very difficult to master anything unless you first understand it. And I know when I do a clinic with athletes, I'm very careful to make sure that I explain why they're doing something as much as trying to encourage them with what they do. I think that's very important for that reason. You can't master anything unless you first understand it. And you need to make sure that perception and reality are congruent, that they're the same thing. So back to that situation where I take an athlete out onto the ice, and after asking them, what are you thinking, when we talk about that for a little bit, then they actually deliver curling shots. I'm out there with my iPhone or my iPad or whatever recording device, and I'm really just videographer. And then we have a look at the delivery. And I say, is there anything that surprises you? Are you surprised with what you see and did not want to see? Or are you surprised because you didn't see something, but you knew darn well that you should see it? Because until perception and reality come together, there's not much help that any instructor or coach can give. So often with experienced athletes, when I ask those questions about what surprises you, they give me a total analysis of their delivery. Then they turn to me and say, oh, Bill, that was great. You've been a big help. Really appreciate it. Great. I pressed record and stop and play. That's all I did. So that's what I mean by perception and reality have to be congruent. Oh, trust your skill set. Well, who knew about that? When I read one of Dr. Miller's I'm not sure if it's the performing under pressure or not. And I must confess, for an awfully long time in my coaching career, if I was listening to a sports psychologist or, some other coach or athlete, whatever, when they got to the part about breathing, I would just kind of roll my eyes and say, okay, I promise to breathe. But when I read the chapter, and I think it is Performing Under Pressure, when I read the chapter about breathing, when Dr. Miller explained it, I had one of those OMG moments, like, oh, you've got to be kidding. I didn't realize it was that important. This always gets an interesting reaction. Don't try too hard. Because we do play one of the sports where you can try too hard. Now, I'm not going to weigh in any further than this, but I think that was one of the problems that one of our teams had in Pyeongchang. I think they were trying too hard. And when you try too hard, you lose focus on process goals and you start to think about outcome goals. And I think one of our teams that didn't make the playoffs was more concerned about not losing as opposed to winning. That's all I'm going to say. Well, here we go. Knowing how to use the power of the mind. So here are those skills to which I was referring. Visualization. It's a skill we all have. And if I was doing this with you folks in front of me, I'd get you to close your eyes. I'd ask you a whole bunch of questions about your front door, color and style and size and window panes and whether it opens from the left or the right and da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody would have any problems answering the rhetorical questions that I threw out. Well, that's because we all have the skill of visualization. But imagery is something a little bit different. And again, I know I'm repeating something a lot of you already know, so I'll just forgive me, but it's important on the tie-in part here. Imagery is all of the senses, smell and taste and feel. Because when you can actually feel yourself do something and visualize the success that you're seeking, the power that it provides for you with the trust that you have in your skill set is off the charts. Because you can put the whole thing together in mental rehearsal. And I know many of you are aware of the basketball free throw study that was done in the United States, where I think there were 30 people at a university community, some staff, some students, some faculty, and they came together with the varsity basketball coach, and they had an hour of free throw shooting instruction with the coach and some of his players. And then they divided them quite randomly into 3 groups. And they said to the first group, look, we've got a baseline of how well you shoot free throws, and so we're going to ask you to come back in a month to see another testing of your ability to shoot free throws. So off they went, 10 of them off they went. Now the next 10 were given a practice schedule, and they promised to come back to the gym twice a week with the coach and his players for free throw shooting practice and lessons and that sort of thing. They said they would do that, and off they went. And then the third group, they were asked twice a week if they would find a quiet place and literally transport themselves into the gymnasium with the coach or the player, whoever was helping them, and feel the basketball in their hand and smell the gymnasium and hear the ball bounce on the floor a few times, and then hold the ball in their hands and feel the pebbled surface of the ball, push the ball in front of your face, roll your wrist, and here was the key, see the ball go into the basket every time. Not just in the basket, swish, and when it hits the floor, it falls always with backspin, comes right back to you at the free throw line. So they said they would do that, and off they went. Now, I'm going through this very quickly, of course. So after a month, when Group A came back having done nothing, Group B having had practices twice a week, and then Group C that had done their mental rehearsal, Well, when they were tested once again, it's not going to surprise you that Group A their score wasn't any better than it had been a month earlier. Group B, the group that practiced, had improved 24%. Group C had improved 22%, just a shade under Group B. And the faculty member that was doing the study made the comment that actually Group B's practice was better in one respect, particularly because when they showed up to do the testing, they hadn't missed a shot in a month. They expected the ball to go into the basket. Now, of course, it didn't every time, but the mental place that they put themselves in was very different. I know my team up in Nanaimo, two of them are students and two of them are working, and they practice every day. Not that they're going to the Nanaimo Curling Club, but they're practicing every day through mental rehearsal. The power of that is off the charts. Okay, I'll get off that pedestal. And I love this quote from Dr. Miller: imagination is the most powerful quality of the mind. And it's imperative to understand that the body does not distinguish between the real and the imagined. And that's why mental rehearsal works. It simply reacts to the mental pictures you focus on. So back to that person who's standing behind the hack. Now, I have a red ribbon when I work with new curlers. Andrea might have something similar, a rope or whatever. And we show them the different lines of delivery. And as I said, for me, it's a red ribbon. And any time that I'm ready to deliver a curling rock, I can't help but not see my red ribbon. And I can see myself make the shot. You can be an internal visualizer or an external visualizer. It doesn't matter. But I want to go through the entire process of successfully making the shot before I even put my foot in the hack. And when an athlete does that, trusting his or her skills, again, the chances of making that shot rise quite dramatically. On YouTube, just last week, there was an interesting, and I would suggest that those of you that are interested and want to do this, go to YouTube, and it was Jordan Spieth and how he approaches a golf shot. And he went through the entire process of what he thinks about and what he sees mentally. And I thought, OMG, well, that's what we're going to be doing on Wednesday night with What Are You Thinking? There's my friend Albert Einstein once again. Imagination is everything. It's a preview of life's coming attraction. Love that. Well, imagine what you could do if you could do what you imagine. Well, you can, but the secret is the imagination, the visualization, the imagery, and mental rehearsal. And the nice thing about our sport is we do not play a flow sport. It's not like hockey and basketball and soccer. We have time to do this stuff. Again, we're back to the discipline thing again. Like, how good do you want to be? How disciplined are you? So here's another set of words: ritual and routine. You know, they're certainly connected, but do they mean exactly the same thing? Well, no, they don't. As humans, we're very ritualistic. We like to do the same thing all the time. As a professional educator, I love to say to my students now, hey, listen, when you come to class tomorrow, sit anywhere you want. Doesn't matter. Just if you want to sit in another desk, that's fine. 99% of the students will sit in the same desk every day, even though they know they can sit anywhere they want, because they're comfortable with that. It's the ritual. But routines are carefully planned and choreographed, put in place to enhance performance. They're subject to constant evaluation. And that's the other question I love to ask athletes is describe your pre-shot routine, not your pre-shot ritual. Most recreational athletes will have a pre-shot ritual. They don't have a clue why they're doing it or even what they're doing. But once you get serious and competitive, and certainly our elite athletes, they have a routine. Well, I'm going to use lawn bowling for just a moment. There's my pre-shot routine before I deliver a lawn bowl. We don't have a hack, we have a mat. But what makes it a routine is because on the other side, I have a reason for everything that I do. Now, this isn't going to have any meaning for you unless you're a lawn bowler. But who thinks about a pull-out routine? Well, that's what I do as a lawn bowler. And again, makes it a routine because I can explain why I do it. Again, it's part of that discipline. It's all about sweating the small stuff. So having a routine and then being able to explain why you do it is really, really important. It kind of goes back to that whole thing about you can't master something unless you first understand it. I wish I had the proverbial nickel for every time that I say to an athlete, what did you learn? And I referred to this a little bit earlier on. What did you learn? You know, and it drives me crazy, and I'm sure it's the same thing with many of you when you're working with an athlete and they're playing in a game, and before the rock comes to rest, they turn and walk away. It just drives me crazy. Like, how can you answer the question, what did I learn, if you don't watch the shot to its conclusion? What do you think, folks? What do great performances have in common? You'll know this when you listen to members of the media, when they interview athletes that come off a great performance, they have something in common. And it is not a long word. They have a sense of calm. Remember I said you can try too hard in our sport? And when you try really, really hard, you take yourself out of a sense of calm. You go into a completely different state. And to stay calm is a skill that is so, so important. You know, so how do you calm down? Well, again, we go back to visualization and imagery, and I'll use my own example here. I'm sitting here in my cabin looking over Lake Cowichan. I can see the dock where my sailboat is not right now, but it's going to be there soon. But I take a 10-second holiday. I go my favorite place, or one of my favorite places, and one of my favorite places is my sailboat, Tschirhart. And when I'm on Lake Cowichan, when I'm actually sailing, I can feel the pressure of the tiller in my hand. I can hear the sail flapping a little bit. I can feel the breeze on the back of my neck, because sailors always sit with their back to the breeze. I can feel the water on the hull of the boat. I'm doing it right now. I'm on the lake sailing. And before I make a curling shot, if I'm in that high anxiety state, I can take a 10-second mental holiday and go to my favorite spot. And anybody can do that. It just takes discipline. Dr. James Laird, The Ideal Performance State, in his book, The New Toughness Training for Sport, that it's a combination of two attributes. That's energy, and that's nutrition and sleep. It's interesting he doesn't say rest. He says nutrition and sleep and fitness. And that can either be high or low. And the other component is attitude. Well, who knew about attitude? And that can be either positive or negative. And when you put an athlete who is fit, properly nourished, and rested, along with a positive attitude, the chances of the best performance are very good. And as you move through the quadrants, as you move over, the energy is good, but the attitude is negative, or bottom left, if the attitude is positive, but the energy is not so great. And of course, if you ever end up down in the bottom right, again, the point that I make with athletes, it's the same skill set. You didn't play like dirt because you were not skillful. There were lots of other things going wrong. And again, the ideal performance state. Dr. James Lair, The New Toughness Training for Sport. And I think in the notes that go with this, you'll see that. Solving sport's greatest mystery. How is it that I can go onto a sheet of curling ice in the morning and be God's gift to curling, and I go back onto the ice after lunch just filled with confidence and I can play like dirt? Same skill set. Well, Dr. Timothy Galway, back in 1974, wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, where he identified the difference between the brain's hemispheres. At the left hemisphere, where we learn skills, when A leads to B, leads to C, and all the details, that's the technocentric part of our brain. The right side of the brain is exactly the opposite. That's where confidence and trust lies. That's where the just do it lies. And the left and right side have to be balanced. And if you want to Google something, Google brain balance. And again, same skill set. But if you go out onto a golf course or a tennis court or a lawn bowl green or a sheet of curling ice, and the brain is in balance, the chances of a consistent performance are not very good. The left side of the brain has a very interesting personality. It's think Donald Trump. Very dominant. Just wants to be in total charge and doesn't give a darn about anything else. And unfortunately, the right side, where we actually perform, has exactly the opposite personality. It's very meek and mild. The trick here, and Dr. Galway would say, Bill, you're simplifying something that took years of research. The trick is to calm the left side of the brain down so that the right side can come in and be balanced with the left side. Because you see, what happened in the morning, if you didn't understand this whole situation about brain balance, it really was the definition of luck, because you see, the left side of the brain always wants a job. And in the morning for your game, it just happened to choose a very appropriate job. But in the afternoon, because you didn't understand about this whole brain balance stuff, it took a very inappropriate job. And so the trick is to give the left side of the brain a job. And there's all sorts of ways to do that when you Google brain balance. But one of the best ways for our sport is to think about a word or a phrase that can and should be technical in nature. And of course, who knew when we started this coaching and instructing that we would encourage somebody to think technically? But it's a great thing. The word or the phrase doesn't have to mean anything except to the individual. And the left side of the brain will say, oh, look, after that, thank you very much. And the right side comes in and says, we've done this a million times before. Visualization, imagery, trust, let's just get it done. And that all takes place before you put your foot in the hat. That's the important point. So here's a little bit of context for you. Just let you read that.
There's a question from Mike. Can you give us an example of what you mean by technical phrase?
Okay, like for me, for example, I'll use personal. I use the word straight. And what that reminds me is that when I pull back, when I bring my sliding foot back and then come out of the hack, it should come back straight and come out straight. And that calms the left side of my brain down. A golfer might say, watch the club hit the ball. You know, the whole business of keep your head down. I mean, that's the dumbest advice that could ever be given to a golfer. The only thing is, it's correct, but it doesn't mean anything. But when you say to yourself, I want to see the club hit the ball. Well, everything else falls into place. So a word or a phrase that means something just to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Mike? Good question. There it is, that calm state of mind. Well, again, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And if you want something you've never had before, you better be prepared to do some things you've never done before. Well, we've all seen this Einstein guy, right, saying, doing the same things over and over, expecting different results. Well, he was right. I don't know who he curled for, but he's a pretty bright guy. But I love Henry Ford. If you think you can, or you think you can't, well, you're right. You see, it's all about attitude. Now, you see a YouTube on the screen here, and Henry and I, we did a little practice last night. Again, I want you to go to YouTube. This was an ESPN video. It's about, I don't know, less than 10 minutes. And the title is Walk On. And so often, you know, when I'm doing this with a group of coaches, instructors, athletes, whatever, and they say, Bill, you talk so much about attitude. Well, you know, attitude's a choice. Well, what's the right attitude? And I say, I can not only tell you what the right attitude is, I can show you. And so go to YouTube. It's an ESPN video, and it's Walk On. That's all I will say. But there's the attitude I like the best. I just can't wait to play. The two teams that I'm going to take to Sweden, I hope that we'll be in the medals as we usually are, and that's the attitude that I want them to have. I just can't wait to play. As far as I'm concerned, that's the perfect attitude. Think about what it implies. I just can't wait to play. I've given you some homework here with videos and things, and there's a movie that I just love, and it's called 7 Days in Utopia. It's the story of a young golfer who's trying to get his tour card. Robert Duvall is in the movie. It's a wonderful movie, more than G-rated. Get your athletes to watch it with you. It's all about this young man who tried to get his tour card and was in a tournament in Texas, and to say things went south fast would be putting it mildly. And he was so steamed that after the last round, he went into the parking lot and up with the trunk and threw the clubs in and slammed the trunk, got in the car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot. He was ticked. And he drove down a rural road in Texas, and he came to a T intersection. And it said, Vanderpool to the right, Utopia to the left. He didn't have a clue what Vanderpool or Utopia, where they were, what they were, but he turned to the right. And he was driving down the road, and he saw Robert Duvall's character, Johnny Crawford, on a horse by a golf green. Well, this got his attention, but it took his attention off the road, and he drove off the road through a wooden fence and did some damage to the car, as you might guess, and climbed out of the car and flopped down on the ground and looked up, and he looked up at the nostrils of the horse that Robert Duvall's character was riding. And basically they had a conversation, and Robert Duvall's character said, look, we'll get this all sorted out, young man, but it's going to take a few days. So the young man ended up spending 7 days in Utopia. And what he did not know was that Johnny Crawford was a retired touring golfer. And in 7 days, now get this, in 7 days, without ever mentioning anything technical, and it was sort of a different lesson every day, without mentioning anything technical, he completely transformed the young man's golf game. Same skill set. And the young man on the golf ball, he put the letters SFT, See it? Visualization, imagery, mental rehearsal. Feel it? What do you think the T might mean? Trust it. See it? Feel it? Trust it. Everyone wants to perform well. Some even know what it takes. But very few are willing to do what it takes to perform well. So hopefully, what are you thinking? You now have an answer to that question. And if you're ever in Calgary in the winter and you get an opportunity to ride in a real bobsleigh, you might consider the answer, no thank you. Take it from experience.
Okay, I've unmuted everybody. Mike had a comment. When he typed in that link, and I'm thinking it's the walk-on, 900 miles, the amazing DJ Gregory Perseverance personified.
That's the one.
All right. Awesome.
DJ Gregory. That's exactly the right one, Mike. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Does anybody have any questions for Bill or any comments?
I just want to
that
say,
was great.
Yeah, great presentation, Bill. Thank you.
Very, very welcome. Thank you.
Well, that being the case, we're a little bit over time, but not a lot. But it was well worth it.
3 hours. I took it under 3 hours. I said I would.
You did. You did great there, Bill. Perfect. So what's going to happen now is people, just to recap, people are going to get in touch with you in order to get the slides. And will you be communicating with them, Bill, about the 2 YouTube videos, the article about brain balance? Will you be communicating that when you send the slides out, or is that something that I should send out when I send out the recording?
I said I would give you my email address, so here it is, everyone. It's my name, Bill, B-I-L-L, and then Chartered Professional Coach, C-H-P-C, so B-I-L-L-C, Charlie, Hotel, Pluto, Charlie, at shaw.ca. And what I want you to do is I want you, when we're finished here, just send me a quick email, because I only want to do this once. I don't want to do it 10 or 11 times. So if everybody does that before they turn in tonight, then I will send this. You'll have it tomorrow.
And Bill's email is also on the email that I sent you with you all with the meeting invitation. So it's there as well. So you have it. You do have it.
All right. I'm just going to ask if Bill could put that in the chat so I can copy paste it. But if it's in the email, then that works too.
Yeah, because I sent the meeting invitation to Bill as well.
Yeah, and all I ask is that you don't give this away. You can do it with anybody that you want, but you have to be the one to do it.
I don't think anybody could deliver it as well as you have, Bill.
I agree.
And it would lose a lot if it was delivered, not secondhand but third hand, because you've given us so much to think about. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording right now, so hang on just a second.